Often when we're processing signals, stereo compression is the way that we want to go. We want to take an individual sound or a bus group of sounds, and we want to apply the same compression settings across the entire sound. But sometimes what we want to do is to break a sound down into different frequency areas and compress those individually. And that's where multi-band compression comes into play. And Logic's Multipressor in the Dynamics folder is the place where you're going to be in a position to apply multi-band compression. So the multipressor looks like this, and what it does by default is to split your signal into 4 bands. Now you can control the crossover points between individual frequency bands up here. I can see that the first band, band number 1, is going to compress everything between 20 Hertz and whatever point this is, about 180, I would imagine, 160, it's saying here. But if I want the sort of bass extension to be bigger, I can simply just drag this left or right, and I'm in a position to set the sort of boundaries for the frequency areas that I want to be compressing. What I can then see is that effectively I've got a collection of settings available to me within each individual band. I've got my compressor threshold. Remember, this would just be for frequencies up to 140 Hertz. I've got a ratio control. I've got attack and release and peak RMS controls as well to allow me to configure an individual sort of compression solution for this particular frequency band. But equally, I could also decide, instead of using compression, to use expansion for this particular band instead. So effectively, in addition to compression, I've got expansion available to me on a per frequency band basis as well. Down in the bottom right hand corner, I've got overall output level, and I've got auto gain if I want it on and off here, as well as a look ahead limiter. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on just one band to see how we might configure a compression setting for it before then putting it back into the mix. Now, if I want to switch an individual band off, I can do that by pressing the numeric buttons here. This would just leave me with band 2. And now, because effectively it's covering the entire frequency area, this is literally just like having a compressor across the entire stereo mix. So I'm going to put these other bands back in. And in addition to being able to switch them on and off, I can also bypass or solo bands as well. So if suddenly I want to experiment with what a sound might sound like compressed in bands 1, 3, and 4, but not 2, I can bypass it. Similarly, if I just want to hear band 2, which I do, I can solo it. So firstly, what I'm going to do is to set the area around which I want to set this particular frequency band up. From it's going to run from 140 Hertz up to 730, and just slightly increase the lower end of that up to 200 Hertz. And then what I've got is a chance to configure its compression settings. Okay, so straight away what I can see is that the individual band here, it's showing me how much gain reduction I'm applying by selecting a threshold, a compression threshold here, and then the ratio that I want as well. Remember, the higher the ratio, the harder the compressor is going to work, and the lower the threshold, the more of the signal is being compressed. So what if what I do is to create a compression treatment here for this band, which means that relative to the other bands, it's much quieter than it was before. Well, its overall output level can be controlled here. You can see that I can push up its overall gain, and you can see that the bar that's responding here is the makeup gain for that individual band. So this is band 2 right here. You can see that as I make that adjustment, the volume is changing. So I can hear this band by itself. I can put it back in with the other ones. This group of frequencies here, sort of engine room of the sound. And then what I can do is to solo the next band and again do the same thing. I want a bit more of the transient of the drums in this area, so I'm increasing the attack time so that more of that gets through before compression. I'm going to set a really snappy release time as well. Here are both of those bands now. So you can see that what I've done is to create two individual treatments for these two individual bands with their own compression settings, and I can just as easily apply expansion to any individual band as well. So the Multipressor is definitely a plugin to get to know. It's useful both at the output stage when you're mastering, or if you're working on kind of bus treatments like drums like this, where effectively you've got different energy in the bass, low mid-range, upper mid-range, and treble, let's say, and what you want to do is to apply different compression treatments to each of those individual bands.